Okay, let's dive in. Picture this. It's February 1942, and things are looking, well, pretty grim for the Allies, especially in the air war over the Channel.
Grim is definitely the word. The RAF, particularly Bomber Command, is getting hammered. They're flying these vital missions over Nazi-occupied Europe, trying to hit targets, but the number of planes actually making it back, it's dropping fast.
Catastrophically fast, right. We're talking about a situation where the ability to even conduct the bombing campaign is starting to look questionable.
Exactly. And it's not just the losses themselves, it's the way it's happening. Pilots are reporting this uncanny ability of the Germans. Night fighters, flak batteries, they seem to know precisely where the bombers are, even in the thick cloud, total darkness.
Like they have some kind of invisible targeting system, lethal accuracy.
That's what it felt like. And the British knew, or at least suspected, that the Germans must have some kind of technological edge, something the Allies just didn't understand yet.
And that something had a location, a specific spot on a clifftop in occupied France, near a little village called Bruneval, about 12 miles north of Le Havre.
Right there, perched high above the Channel, was the heart of this new German advantage, a piece of advanced radar technology called the Würzburg system.
Which brings us to the mission itself, Operation Biting, or, as history remembers it, the Bruneval Raid. The plan sounds almost, well, insane.
It really does. The objective: drop 120 paratroopers deep behind enemy lines, not to capture ground, it's not to destroy a bridge, but to steal the critical parts of this Würzburg radar.
A smash and grab for technology, under fire, with an escape route that looked, frankly, suicidal.
Absolutely. And this wasn't just about getting one up on the enemy tactically. This was potentially about strategic survival for the RAF.
So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack how the Germans got this lead, the intelligence failures on the British side. We'll look at the detective work, this brilliant piece of analysis that pinpointed the Würzburg.
And then the raid itself. The planning, the unbelievable risks, the execution, and crucially, how stealing this one piece of kit fundamentally changed the air war.
Okay, let's unpack this. So to really get why this raid was so vital in 42, we need a bit of context about radar itself, don't we?
Definitely. You have to remember Britain itself had survived the Battle of Britain back in 1940, largely because of its own radar system, chain home.
That was the technological ace up Britain's sleeve back then.
It really was. Chain home was revolutionary for its time, but it operated on pretty long wavelengths. We're talking 10, maybe 12 meters.
Which meant, what's the implication of that long wavelength?
It meant you needed huge, massive antenna arrays, those iconic steel towers dotted along the British coast, hundreds of feet tall. They were fixed, immovable.
Okay, so great for spotting incoming raids from a distance.
Fantastic for that. Early warning. Knowing a big formation was coming from, say, 100 miles out. But precision. Aiming, absolutely not. It gave you a general area, not a specific target point.
So when German night fighters suddenly started swatting RAF bombers out of the sky with pinpoint accuracy in 1941, British scientists were genuinely stumped.
They were baffled because they still thought they had the upper hand in radar tech. And a lot of that thinking, that complacency, actually came down to one specific assessment.
You're talking about Robert Watson-Watt, the father of British radar.
That's the one. He'd been sent to Germany back in 1937, specifically to look for German radar development. And what did he look for?
Let me guess. Giant steel towers like chain home.
Exactly. He toured the coast, saw nothing like the British system, and concluded, well, the Germans must be years behind us.
A classic intelligence trap, assuming your enemy thinks and builds just like you do.
Precisely. And it led to this really dangerous false sense of security. Dangerous because the Germans were developing radar just differently.
And the clues were there, weren't they? Even before the war, there was this almost mythical piece of intelligence, the Oslo Report.
Ah, the Oslo Report. Yes. One of the great what-ifs of intelligence history. In late 1939, this anonymous package arrives at the British Embassy in Oslo, Norway.
Sent by?
An unknown German scientist.
Yeah.
We now think it was almost certainly a man named Hans Ferdinand Mayer who was deeply opposed to the Nazis.
And this package contained what? Blueprints.
Not quite blueprints, but detailed descriptions. Descriptions of a whole range of secret German weapons projects. Things like proximity fuses for shells, early missile guidance systems, and, crucially for our story, advanced radar systems, including one specifically named Würzburg.
Wow. Okay, so alarm bells should have been ringing everywhere in British intelligence.
You'd think so. But the reaction was, Well, mostly skepticism. It sounded too comprehensive, too James Bond-like, maybe. Some thought it was deliberate German disinformation designed to make the British waste resources chasing phantoms.
So it just got filed away.
Pretty much. It circulated, some people noted it, but it didn't trigger a major shift in thinking. It could have been completely forgotten, if not for one absolutely pivotal figure.
Dr. R.V. Jones.
Dr. Reginald Victor Jones, a brilliant physicist, only 30 years old at the time, working in scientific intelligence for the Air Ministry. And Jones, well, Jones didn't dismiss the Oslo report.
He saw something others missed.
He had this incredible knack for connecting disparate pieces of information. He was looking at routine intelligence, like decoded German radio messages, Luftwaffe signals.
And he started noticing something.
He started noticing recurring code names popping up in these intercepts. Two names kept appearing together, Freya and Würzburg.
The same Würzburg mentioned in the Oslo report.
Exactly. That connection made Jones think, hang on, maybe that report wasn't fantasy after all. And he started developing a theory. He suspected the British assumption about long wavelengths and giant towers was wrong. He thought the Germans must have figured out how to use shorter wavelengths.
Okay, explain that. Why is shorter wavelength such a big deal in radar?
It changes everything.
Okay.
If you can generate and detect radar signals at, say, 0.5 meter instead of 10 meters, two huge things happen. First, the equipment needed the antennas, the transmitters gets much, much smaller, portable even.
So no need for giant coastal towers. You could put it on a truck or a clifftop.
Precisely. And second, and this is the crucial bit for accuracy, shorter wavelengths let you focus the radar beam much more tightly. Think of it like focusing a flashlight beam from a wide floodlight down to a narrow spotlight.
More concentrated energy, better definition.
Vastly better definition and accuracy. You can pinpoint a target much more effectively. Jones realized this was likely the German secret.
So he has the theory, links it to the Oslo report and the intercepts, but he needs proof, right? Hard evidence.
Absolutely. Theories are one thing. Convincing the military establishment is another. The first piece of hard evidence came in February 1941. Jones was meticulously studying aerial reconnaissance photos.
Spy planes flying over occupied territory.
Yes. Specifically, photos taken near The Hague on the Dutch coast. And in these photos, he spotted something unusual. These rotating circular dishes, about 20 feet across.
Not giant towers, dishes.
Dishes. This, Jones deduced, was the Freya radar mentioned in the intercepts. Freya turned out to be a German early warning system, operating around 2.5 meters wavelength. Good range, maybe 120 kilometers, finding the bombers initially.
Okay, so Freya finds the bombers like Chain-Home did for the British, but the intercepts always paired Freya with Würzburg.
Right. Freya spotted them, but Jones was convinced Würzburg guided the defenses, the night fighters, the flak guns. Würzburg had to be the precision element. If Freya was the searchlight, Würzburg was the sniper scope.
So he needed to find Würzburg. He figured it must be even smaller, operating on an even shorter wavelength.
That was the hypothesis, and the confirmation, the smoking gun, came almost a year later, in December 1941. An RAF Spitfire, flying an incredibly risky low-level photo run over the French coast near Bruneval.
And the photos from that mission.
They showed it. Clear as day, relatively speaking, sitting right there on the cliff top, 400 feet above the English Channel, a small parabolic dish, maybe 10 feet across, much smaller than Freya.
Positioned exactly where you'd want a precision radar.
Perfectly positioned.
Yeah.
Between a small villa, which intelligence suggested housed the technicians and guards, and the sheer cliff edge. And the photos didn't just show the dish, they showed the defenses.
Concrete bunkers, guard posts.
All of it. Machine gun nests, the main German garrison barracks just sitting there maybe 100 yards away. And crucially, the beach below, heavily fortified. Pillboxes covering the only viable sea approach. It was a fortress.
That single photo crystallized the threat. Jones now had the proof.
He did. And his report to the chiefs of staff was stark. This Würzburg radar wasn't just a nuisance. It was the linchpin of Germany's night air defense. It operated with a precision the Allies simply couldn't match and couldn't counter effectively.
Because they didn't know its secrets. The frequency, the mechanics.
It's exactly. Jones argued the only way to develop effective countermeasures, jamming technology, decoys, was to physically get their hands on the device, study it, reverse engineer its secrets.
So the objective became clear. Steal the Würzburg.
It sounds crazy, but from a scientific and strategic perspective, it was utterly logical. They had to capture it. This wasn't just another raid. It was potentially the key to reopening the skies for the RAF.
Proposing a raid like this, parachuting men in to steal top-secret tech from a clifftop fortress, That must have raised some eyebrows in high command.
Oh, absolutely. It landed on the desk of Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten. Now, Mountbatten was head of combined operations, and he had a reputation for favoring, let's say, bold and unconventional ideas.
So he was probably the right person to pitch this to.
You loved it. The sheer audacity appealed to him. But the more traditional branches, the Royal Navy, the Army, they were less enthusiastic.
Why the resistance? Seemed strategically vital.
The Navy worried, understandably, about the extraction phase, sending boats close inshore to a heavily defended enemy coast at night. Hugely risky. The Army saw it as a very specialized, almost boutique operation, primarily benefiting the RAF while risking valuable infantry lives. There was definite pushback.
So Mountbatten's enthusiasm wasn't enough on its own. Who broke the deadlock?
Ultimately, it went right to the top, to Winston Churchill. And Churchill, well, he thrived on aggressive action. He saw the strategic imperative Britain needed air power to fight back, and he loved the idea of hitting the Germans where they least expected it.
Classic Churchill. Seize the initiative.
Exactly. He personally overruled the caution of the military establishment and gave Operation Biting the green light. He understood they needed not just the technology, but also a victory, a sign of British ingenuity and daring.
Okay, so the raid is approved. Now the planners face this nightmare logistical problem. How do you actually do it? A frontal assault from the sea was clearly impossible.
Completely out of the question. Those cliffs at Bruneval are incredibly steep. Any boats approaching would be spotted miles away, and the German machine guns shown in the photos commanded every inch of that beach. It would be a slaughter.
And even if they somehow got ashore, the Germans would likely destroy the radar before the attackers reached it.
For sure. Speed and surprise were absolutely paramount, which led them to the only viable, if terrifying, alternative: go in from the air.
Paratroopers. Drop behind the lines for a lightning strike, then a rapid extraction by sea before the main German forces could react.
That was the plan. And this put the spotlight squarely on Britain's brand new airborne forces, the Parachute Regiment.
They were a very new formation at this point, weren't they?
Incredibly new. They'd only done one very small combat jump before this. Their commander, Major General Boy Browning, saw Bruneval as a make-or-break moment for his entire concept.
He needed to prove airborne forces could deliver strategic results.
Desperately. A success here would unlock funding, resources, expansion. Failure could set the whole idea back years. So for Browning, the stakes were immense. This raid had to work.
And the man tasked with leading the actual assault, Major John Frost.
Major John Frost, commander of C Company, 2nd Parachute Battalion. He was 30 years old, Scottish, known for being intense, focused, utterly fearless. But crucially,
He'd never actually led a combat jump before.
neither he nor most of his men. C Company had about 120 soldiers, many of them fresh out of parachute school, basically rookies. And they were given just 8 weeks of intense training for arguably the most critical special operation of the war up to that point.
8 weeks to prepare for that. It speaks volumes about the urgency. How did they break down such a complex mission for this inexperienced unit?
The plan was incredible detail, almost choreographed. Frost divided his company into 5 small, specialized teams, each named after a famous British admiral, a nod to the naval extraction, perhaps.
Okay, what were the teams and their jobs?
Right, you had Hardy Section, led by Frost himself, their job: hit the villa, take out the technicians and guards housed there. Then Jellicoe Section, secure the radar dish itself, the immediate objective.
Okay, Hardy hits the house, Jellicoe secures the dish. What about the main garrison?
That was Drake Section's job. Critically important. They had to lay down covering fire on the German barracks just 100 yards away, remember, and keep the main enemy force pinned down while the others work.
And the escape route? The beach.
That fell to Nelson's section. Their task was arguably the most dangerous after the initial assault. Clear the beach defenses, neutralize those pillboxes and machine guns so the boats could get in. And finally, Rodney's section was held in reserve.
5 specialized teams, each with a critical role. It sounds like clockwork precision was needed.
Absolutely. And in the middle of all this planned chaos, you had the most important man on the mission who wasn't really a soldier at all.
Flight Sergeant Charles Cox, the RAF radar tech.
The linchpin. An expert radar mechanic, but not a combat trooper. His job was to go in with the assault teams, under fire, in the dark, identify the crucial components of this alien technology, dismantle them with basic tools, and make sure they got out safely. The entire raid hinged on him.
Unbelievable pressure on one man. Did they have good intelligence to work with? Beyond the aerial photos?
Yes, thankfully. The French resistance played a vital role. Agent Remy and his network provided absolutely crucial ground-level intelligence.
What kind of details?
Things like updated photos of the site, guard routines, patrol timings, accurate numbers for the German garrison strength in the villa versus the barracks, invaluable detail for Frost's planning.
And they practiced relentlessly. I heard they built a full-scale replica.
They did. Somewhere on Salisbury Plain, they built a complete mock-up of the Bruneval clifftop layout based on the photos and resistance reports. They rehearsed the assault over and over. But the training also highlighted the biggest danger.
The extraction. Tell us about the final dress rehearsal.
By all accounts, the final rehearsal, just days before the actual raid, was a near disaster. Particularly the coordination with the Royal Navy landing craft.
What went wrong?
The boats couldn't get close enough to the practice beach. They kept grounding on sandbars maybe 50 meters out. They just couldn't reach the shore properly.
Oh, wow. So if that happened on the real raid...
The implication was terrifyingly clear. They could successfully fight their way in, steal the radar components, fight their way back to the beach, and then be stranded. Wading out through the surf, under fire, dragging equipment and wounded. It would be a death trap.
The entire mission could succeed tactically and still end in annihilation on the beach.
That was the razor's edge they were operating on. The margin for error, especially on the extraction, was effectively zero. They knew it. And yet the mission went ahead. The stakes were just too high not to try.
So the night arrives, February 27th, 1942. The weather clears enough. Time to go.
That's right. Around 10:30 p.m., 12 RAF Whitley bombers lifted off from England. Each one modified to carry 10 paratroopers and their gear.
Heavy gear, I imagine. Weapons, explosives.
Absolutely. Sten guns, rifles, grenades, combat knives. The officers typically carried American Colt .45 pistols, a bit of a status symbol, but also a powerful sidearm. And amidst all that weaponry...
Flight Sergeant Cox, with his toolkit.
Exactly. Screwdrivers, wire cutters, pliers, maybe a small wrench or two, and a bag. His weapons were his tools and his knowledge. He was arguably the most precious cargo on those planes.
They reached the French coast around midnight. Time for the jump. How did it go? Did the precision planning hold up?
Well, not entirely. This is where the friction of war kicks in. The jump happened in darkness. Navigation was imperfect. While most of the force landed reasonably close to the target zone, a critical error occurred.
Oh, no. What happened?
Half of Nelson's section, remember, they were the vital beach clearing party, got dropped miles away, about 3 kilometers south of where they were supposed to be.
That's a disaster waiting to happen. Frost lands, thinks he has his beach security team assembling, but half of them are lost somewhere in the French countryside.
Precisely. It's an immediate crisis for Frost on the ground. He's missing key personnel for the most dangerous phase, the escape. But, and this is crucial, there was a stroke of luck.
What was that?
Despite the noise of 12 bombers flying low overhead, the German garrison at Bruneval itself seemed completely oblivious. Maybe they assumed it was just bombers passing further inland. The element of surprise, miraculously, was still intact.
Okay, so they have surprise, but they're undermanned for the beach assault later. What does Frost do?
He doesn't hesitate. Time is critical. The men quickly bury their parachutes in the light covering of snow on the ground. They form up as best they can. Frost realizes he has to adapt, reorganize on the fly, and push on. He signals the advance towards the villa and the radar site around 12:45 a.m.
The assault begins. How quickly did things happen?
Incredibly fast. That was the plan. Shock, speed, violence of action. Frost's hardy section swarmed the villa. The German technicians and guards inside were caught completely off guard.
A fierce firefight.
Brief but brutal. Reports say 2 German soldiers were shot down almost instantly as they reacted. The resistance in the villa collapsed very quickly. Some surrendered, some were captured. It was secured within minutes.
But that gunfire must have alerted the main barracks nearby.
Instantly. As soon as the shooting started at the villa, the German soldiers in the barracks 100 yards away scrambled to respond. Machine gun fire erupted from the barracks towards the villa and the radar site.
Which is where Drake's section comes in.
Exactly. Drake's section immediately opened up with their Bren guns and rifles, pouring sustained fire onto the barracks building. Not trying to take it, just trying to keep the Germans' heads down, keep them pinned inside while the crucial work happened at the radar dish.
And Jellicoe section. They went straight for the Würzburg.
Straight for the prize. Lieutenant Peter Young led Jellicoe section, and they quickly secured the shallow concrete pit where the 10-foot Würzburg dish was located. It was apparently rotating slowly when they arrived. They secured the perimeter, and then all eyes, metaphorically speaking, turned to Cox.
Flight Sergeant Cox. Showtime. What's he facing?
Imagine it. He gets to the dish. It's dark, maybe moonlit, maybe just starlight, and the flashes of gunfire. Bullets are definitely whining overhead from the ongoing firefight with the barracks. He's got a small hooded lamp, maybe, and he's looking at this piece of incredibly advanced hostile technology.
What did he see? What was the Würzburg like up close?
Sources mention its elegant engineering, this 3-meter parabolic dish, the complex controls. Cox, as a radar expert, would have immediately recognized the quality, but he didn't have time for admiration. He needed to identify and remove the vital parts.
What were the absolute must-haves? The components that held the secrets?
You needed the core electronics. That meant the receiver unit, how it picked up the returning signal, the transmitter, how it generated the pulse, the control panel showing the frequency settings and operator interface. But the absolute crown jewel, the thing that likely gave the Würzburg its uncanny precision, was a specific component called the quarrel.
The quarrel. What on earth is a quarrel?
Quarrel is the German word for whisk or rotor. It was the heart of the Würzburg's conical scanning system. This was the technological leap the British suspected but hadn't confirmed.
Okay, break down conical scanning. How did the quarrel enable that?
Right, think of the radar beam as a pencil pointing at the target. A simple beam tells you if you're hitting the target, but not precisely where in the beam the target is. Is it dead center? Off to the edge? Conical scanning solves that.
Oh.
The quarrel was essentially the antenna feed horn at the focal point of the dish, but it was designed to rotate slightly off-axis very rapidly. So instead of pointing straight ahead, the beam center traced a small circle or cone around the line of sight to the target.
It's deliberately making the beam wobble slightly.
Exactly. A very precise controlled wobble, maybe only 0.1 or 0.2 degrees wide.
Yeah.
Now, if the target aircraft is perfectly centered in that wobble, the strength of the reflected signal coming back to the receiver stays constant as the beam spins around it. But if the aircraft drifts slightly off-center, as the rotating beam sweeps past it, the signal strength will rise and fall rhythmically. The operator sees this fluctuation on their screen.
And they just adjust the dish until the signal is steady.
Precisely. They nudge the dish left, right, up, down until that rhythmic pulse disappears and the return signal is strong and constant. At that point, they know the target is perfectly centered in the beam's conical scan. That's what gave the Würzburg its incredible accuracy, down to a fraction of a degree. Lethal accuracy for flak and night fighters. The quarrel was the physical key to that system. Cox had to get the quarrel.
While Cox is performing this high-pressure electronic surgery, Frost gets bad news about the beach situation.
He does. He realizes that Nelson's section, the beach clearing party, is still mostly missing because of the bad drop. The escape route, those fortified pillboxes and machine gun posts covering the beach are still active, still manned by Germans.
So the Navy boats can't come in, they'd be cut to pieces.
Exactly. It's the dress rehearsal nightmare scenario playing out for real. The entire success of the mission now hinges on clearing that beach, and Frost is critically short of men to do it.
What's his move? He has to improvise, fast.
He does. He makes a bold decision. He pulls men from Hardy's section, who secured the villa, and Drake's section, who are still suppressing the barracks, and retasks them. Tells them, essentially, forget the villa, forget the barracks for a moment. We need to assault those beach defenses now.
That sounds incredibly risky, reducing the suppression on the main garrison while sending men into another firefight.
Hugely risky. But he had no choice. It turned into a desperate, close-quarters fight down the slopes towards the beach, attacking the German strong points in the dark.
A race against time, with Cox still working on the radar and the main German garrison trying to break out.
It was chaos. But then, another stroke of luck, or maybe incredible determination, just as Frost's ad hoc assault party is getting heavily engaged with the beach defenses, who shows up?
The missing Nelson section?
The missing Nelson section. They had managed to regroup after being dropped miles away, got oriented, and basically sprinted 3 kilometers across occupied farmland and roads, navigating by instinct and starlight, arriving just as the fight for the beach reached its climax.
Unbelievable timing. Their arrival must have tipped the balance.
It did. Their arrival allowed the paratroopers to finally overwhelm the last pockets of resistance guarding the beach. The escape route was secured, just barely, and just in time.
Because back at the radar site,
at about 2:15 a.m., Flight Sergeant Cox straightened up and famously announced, "I've got it." He'd managed to dismantle the key components, the receiver, the transmitter bits, the control panel sections, and critically, the quarrel.
Mission accomplished, technically. Now get out.
They quickly loaded the precious, heavy components onto a small collapsible handcart they'd brought for the purpose. Frost looked towards the channel and fired the agreed-upon signal flare.
And that flare was like ringing the dinner bell for every German unit on the coast?
Pretty much. The moment that flare went up, the German reaction intensified massively. Mortar rounds started raining down. Tracer fire crisscrossed the beach, and the cliff paths from Germans now converging on Bruneval from nearby posts. It became a mad scramble to the shoreline.
But did the Navy show up? Did the boats make it in this time?
They did. Through the chaos and the incoming fire, the 6 Royal Navy landing craft nosed onto the beach. Unlike the rehearsal, they got right in. The paratroopers surged forward, wading into the freezing water, dragging the cart with the radar parts, helping their wounded comrades. All under increasingly heavy machine gun fire from Shermans, now lining the cliff tops above.
Just pure desperation to get aboard those boats.
Absolute desperation. But they made it. The last man scrambled aboard, the ramps came up, and the landing craft reversed engines and pulled away from the beach, leaving occupied France behind.
What time was that? How long did the whole ground operation take?
The last boat pushed off around 2:45 a.m. From the moment Frost's men started the assault to the moment they left the beach, the entire operation took just about 2 hours. An incredible feat of timing and execution, despite the setbacks.
And the cost. What were the casualties?
Considering the nature of the raid, the losses were remarkably light. The British lost 2 men killed, 6 wounded, and 6 more were captured, likely cut off during the withdrawal. German losses were reported as 5 killed and significantly 2 captured, one of whom was apparently a Würzburg radar technician, a valuable intelligence bonus.
So they got the hardware and potentially some human intelligence, too. They arrived back in Portsmouth. When?
Less than 14 hours after they took off, they were back on British soil by lunchtime on February 28th. It was an astonishingly rapid turnaround.
And the reaction back home must have been electric. Britain desperately needed good news in early '42.
Absolutely. The raid was hailed as a massive success, a much-needed morale booster. Churchill himself was apparently overjoyed, famously calling it a deed of glory.
The paratroopers became heroes overnight. Frost, Cox.
They did. 19 decorations were awarded for the raid. Major Frost got the Military Cross for his leadership. And Flight Sergeant Cox, the unassuming technician who risked everything, received the Distinguished Service Cross. Publicly, it was a triumph of daring. But the real victory, the strategic payoff, was happening behind closed doors, in the labs.
Right. The captured Würzburg components, they were rushed to the scientists. Presumably, Dr. Jones was front and center.
You bet. Jones and his team finally had the actual hardware in their hands. They could stop guessing and start analyzing. And what they found confirmed their worst fears, but also gave them the key to unlock the problem.
What were the key technical specs they confirmed?
First, the operating frequency. It worked on a 50-centimeter wavelength, around 560 for 580 megahertz. That was much shorter than British systems, explaining its small size and potential accuracy.
And the accuracy itself, that conical scanning system with the coral?
They confirmed it. By examining the coral and the receiver circuits, they understood exactly how the conical scan worked. That slight off-axis rotation of the receiving element allowed the system to achieve that phenomenal tracking accuracy down to 0.1 or 0.2 degrees. Pinpoint accuracy, essentially.
They also found it could be tuned, right? It wasn't just one fixed frequency.
Correct. It could operate across a reasonably wide frequency band, which made simply trying to jam it with broad-spectrum noise very difficult and inefficient.
So they now understood the threat in detail and the scale of it. How many Würzburgs were out there?
Combining the technical analysis with other intelligence, they estimated the Germans had deployed, or were deploying, over 4,000 Würzburg units across occupied Europe. When paired with a long-range Freya radar for initial detection, it formed this incredibly dense, effective, integrated air defense network.
Okay, knowledge is power. They knew how it worked. What could they do about it? What was the countermeasure?
The intelligence from Bruneval allowed them to immediately perfect a countermeasure concept they'd already been tinkering with, something codenamed window. We know it better today as chaff.
Chaff. You mean just strips of metal foil?
Deceptively simple, yes. But the genius was in the details learned from the captured Würzburg. The window strips weren't just random bits of metal. They had to be cut to a very specific length.
Why the specific length?
They were cut to be half the wavelength of the Würzburg's operating frequency, around 25 centimeters long for the main Würzburg variants. This precise length made each strip act as a resonant dipole antenna when hit by the radar waves.
So each strip basically screamed back at the Würzburg receiver.
Exactly. It reflected the radar energy extremely efficiently at the Würzburg's frequency, creating a radar echo almost indistinguishable from a large aircraft, like a bomber.
So dropping bundles of these would create false targets.
Not just 1 or 2 false targets. A single bundle could contain thousands of these strips. When dropped from a bomber, they'd bloom out into a cloud. And because they were perfectly tuned to the Würzburg's frequency and exploited the way its receiver worked, the effect was devastating.
How so? More than just clutter.
Much more. It completely overwhelmed the German radar scopes. Instead of seeing a few distinct bomber targets, the operators saw thousands upon thousands of returns. The entire screen would just go white with signals. The conical scanning system, which needed a single target to lock onto, became utterly useless. The whole precision guidance system collapsed.
Blinded by tiny strips of aluminum foil. Ingenious. So they perfected this in early 1942, right after Bruneval. Did they use it immediately?
And this is one of the most fascinating and controversial parts of the story. No, they didn't.
They didn't. Why not? If it could save bomber crews.
There was huge debate and, frankly, fear at the highest levels. The worry was that window was too effective, too simple. If the British used it, the Germans would immediately figure out how it worked, copy it, and use it against Britain's own chain-home radar network.
The fear of retaliation, plunging Britain's defenses back into chaos.
Exactly. It was deemed too strategically valuable to risk revealing until the moment was absolutely right. So incredibly, window was kept secret, locked away for 17 months.
17 months. While bomber losses continued, that's a heavy strategic gamble.
A terrible gamble, weighing potential future risks against definite current losses. The decision was finally made to deploy it in the summer of 1943.
When was the first large-scale use?
July 24th, 1943. During Operation Camorra, the massive, devastating series of bombing raids on the city of Hamburg.
And the effect? Was it as dramatic as predicted?
Instantaneous and utterly spectacular. As the first waves of bombers dropped window, German radar operators reported their screens just dissolving into meaningless noise. The entire sophisticated night fighter guidance system, built around Freya and Würzburg, simply collapsed in confusion.
And Allied losses.
They plummeted. On the Hamburg raids and subsequent missions using window, bomber loss rates dropped dramatically from the unsustainable 6–7% they had been suffering, down to maybe 2–3%. Thousands of Allied aircrew lives were saved, directly traceable back to the intelligence gathered at Bruneval 17 months earlier. The electronic war had decisively turned.
Beyond the tech, did the raid itself change how the military thought about operations?
Profoundly. Bruneval became the textbook example of successful combined operations. You had the RAF delivering the troops, the Army Paratroopers conducting the ground assault, and the Royal Navy executing the critical extraction, all working together seamlessly under extreme pressure.
A template for future, bigger operations?
Absolutely. The lessons learned at Bruneval about inter-service coordination, detailed intelligence, specialized units, timing, extraction logistics were studied intensely. They directly informed the planning for much larger amphibious and airborne operations later in the war, most notably D-Day.
And for the parachute regiment itself, for Boy Browning's vision?
Bruneval was a proof of concept he desperately needed. Its success silenced many critics and secured the political backing and funding for the significant expansion of British airborne forces. They grew from a small experimental unit into a battle-hardened elite force. And the American airborne divisions, forming around the same time, heavily leaned on the British experience, with Bruneval as a key case study.
So the raid had ripples far beyond just capturing a radar. What about the man who led it on the ground, John Frost? Bruneval wasn't the end of his story.
Not by a long shot. John Frost became something of a legend. His calm, determined leadership style inspired fierce loyalty. After Bruneval, he led his battalion, the 2nd Parachute Battalion, through tough fighting in North Africa, then Sicily, then Italy, building a reputation for being always at the forefront, always reliable.
But he's most famously associated with a later operation, one that didn't end so successfully.
That's right. Operation Market Garden, September 1944. The attempt to seize the bridges leading into Germany, immortalized as a bridge too far. Frost and his 2nd Battalion were tasked with capturing the road bridge over the Rhine at Arnhem.
And they succeeded initially.
They did. Against all odds, they captured the northern end of the Arnhem Bridge. But they were quickly cut off, surrounded by overwhelming German forces, including SS Panzer divisions. And they held that bridge end for 4 days. 4 days of brutal, relentless street fighting, completely outnumbered, running low on everything.
Until they were finally overrun.
They held out until they literally had no ammunition left. It was one of the epic last stands of military history. Frost himself was wounded and eventually captured. But the sheer tenacity and courage of his battalion became legendary.
A testament to his leadership forged partly at Bruneval.
You could certainly argue that. The Dutch certainly remembered his courage. After the war, they officially renamed the Arnhem Bridge the John Frost Bridge, the John Frost Bridge in his honor, a lasting tribute. He eventually retired from the army as a major general in 1968.
So looking back at Bruneval, how significant was it ultimately? We heard Churchill call it a deed of glory.
High command certainly recognized its value. Lord Cheshire, a highly decorated pilot himself, apparently told Frost years later that the benefits of Bruneval were almost incalculable. He said it gave Britain this enormous advantage in the absolutely critical radar war. It really showed what a small group with courage, ingenuity, and precise intelligence could achieve against seemingly impossible odds.
So wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway from the Bruneval Raid?
I think it really underscores the immense power of information in modern warfare, specifically technological information. Capturing that Würzburg wasn't just about stealing a gadget, it was about stealing knowledge. Knowledge that directly countered a devastating enemy capability, saved countless lives, and arguably shortened the path to victory.
It proved the value of targeted, intelligence-led special operations, a small investment of risk for a potentially huge strategic return.
Exactly. 120 men risked everything, and the payoff was disabling a core part of Germany's air defense system across Europe. It allowed the Allied bomber offensive to regain momentum, which was crucial for degrading German industry and paving the way for D-Day.
A tiny raid with enormous consequences. But it does leave us with a final, perhaps uncomfortable thought, doesn't it? You mentioned the 17-month delay in using Window.
Yes. The intelligence gain was immediate. The countermeasure was perfected quickly in 1942. But the decision was made to hold it back, primarily out of fear the Germans would copy it and use it against Britain.
Which raises a difficult question about the cost of that caution. How many aircrew lives were lost during the 17 months that might have been saved if Window had been deployed sooner?
It's impossible to quantify precisely, but certainly thousands. Bomber Command's loss rates remain painfully high during that period. It highlights this constant, agonizing calculation in wartime. Do you use your technological advantage now to save lives immediately, or do you hold it back for a potentially greater strategic effect later, accepting the ongoing cost?
A terrible dilemma. The decision to wait suggests just how vital they believed maintaining that technological secrecy was, perhaps even valuing it above the immediate saving of lives at that specific point.
It shows the immense weight placed on these technological secrets. They clearly felt that unleashing Window too early might compromise a long-term air campaign or even the D-Day landings if the Germans developed effective countermeasures to the countermeasure. It's a stark reminder that strategic decisions in war often involve choosing between awful options.
A fascinating and crucial piece of Second World War history. The courage of the men, the brilliance of the science, and the hard strategic choices.